You have to really look at how you do it, and it's very important to me that when you come out of the area, you haven't changed the way it was before you go in. So we've got the lowest emission engines, the best wash boats, and we're very sensitive to animals and that sort of thing. And I think we almost make a zero imprint, so it's very good.
And you can continue to do that as the business grows?
Yes, it's very important. On Bruny Island side of things, Bruny Island Charters, I have 3 boats, and last year I made a financial decision instead of expanding that one to go into a new area. And it's not just the animals and the area I go in, but also the amenity of the people who live there. So I didn't want to create too big a business, and I've slowed the expansion of Bruny down, meanwhile expanding another area and taking the weak links of Bruny to the new area of Tasman Island Cruises.
Now, you've developed the business out of, fishing expeditions, I suppose, originally. What were your biggest challenges growing the business?
Okay, look, for sure. Look, definitely to start, I needed a friendly bank because I borrowed quite a lot of money. It was a challenge to get the first customers. We'd go with one person and be very consistent, and I know the first year I did lose a fair bit of money, about $40,000, but the bigger challenges for me was to provide a very safe working environment for my staff and also the customers who go along, because without that you wouldn't have a business, and then to really fine-tune my weak points quickly, to then keep on sharpening your pencil to what we are now 10 years in, and we don't do too much fine-tuning now, but we still do.
Do you need to do a lot of marketing? Because obviously the word's got out about Bruny Island Charters.
Yeah, it's funny. To begin with, I had to do enormous amounts of marketing. I used to have to strive to get visiting journalists and reporters and that sort of thing. And you get to a certain size and then you sort of just start a bit of an avalanche, and then all of a sudden they come to you. So even though we do a lot of marketing and a lot of strategic planning, it's a lot easier now because we're recognised, and a lot of people, we're classed as one of the iconic things to do in Tasmania and one of the signature experiences. So now people are looking us up rather than us striving to get them, which is great.
Well, how do you do your marketing? You've got your website, obviously, but how else do you get the word out to the wider world?
What I do is each winter I spend a lot of the winter really doing that side of things, because when you're really flat out in the summer you don't have a lot of time to do that sort of thing. But I did it all myself for the first 9 years, and last year I employed a marketing manager, which she's managed to handle. I've handballed a lot to her. But locally we have a very good distribution of brochures. We work up long-term relationships with everyone we deal with. We give a lot of familiarisations. We are at all the travel centres, and even right down to accommodation places who do massages or hairstyles. They all get familiars. And then interstate, we've got hundreds and hundreds of travel agents who book our product. We work a lot with Tourism Tasmania and a lot of visiting journalists programs, and we're involved a lot in those. And then internationally, we use a lot of inbound tour companies to take our bookings in Australia, but then they are linked to hundreds and hundreds, I mean, in some cases thousands of different people around the world. And Tourism Tasmania also have got people in certain regions around the world, and we use those as well.
How do you finance your growth? Are you doing it organically as you grow, or do you need, I mean, you have made some big investments to grow with,
sure,
with the new boats that you mentioned, and there's Tasman Island Cruises now, of course. So how are you doing all that?
Yeah, look, what we do is we plough back about 50% of our net profit back into growing the business, and then we borrow the rest, and we usually take fairly short-term loans, 4 to 5 years. So as the business progresses, now in its 10th year, we're well and truly along the path of the initial loans all gone, and so it's sort of building each year on that side of things. So we borrow and we save.
Well, can I ask you about your staff, Robert? Because you were one of the biggest employers of Bruny Island now. So does that add extra responsibilities as well as being an opportunity for people on the island? Sure.
Look, we're growing our staff all the time. I remember when we had our first staff functions, you know, there were 3 or 4 people at them and this sort of thing. And it hit home last about last August when we had a staff function at a place in Hobart, and with their partners and with their children, there was about 70 people there, and it did really hit home to me that all of a sudden it's not just me in this business, but you're responsible for their well-being and welfare as well. And you know, fortunately I've got the most beautiful staff, but it did hit home that there's a huge responsibility there as well.
So you have to look after them.
Yes, look, what I do, I really believe in communication. It's so important. I have meetings with my staff formally once a year individually. I have a lot more impromptu meetings every week with various staff and that sort of thing. I always, even if it's just verbally, reward them for a job well done, that sort of thing. And we all work together to constructively criticise, not really criticise, but improve all staff, and that's a team effort. And again, in my concrete planning, I do have a percentage of net profits that's given to all my staff proportionally at the end of the financial year, and that does add up to be a good amount of money. I also have a fund that I have per staff member each year that they're welcome to spend on well-being and that sort of thing, even if it can either be personal development or it can be, I don't mind if it's yoga lessons or anything, because it's very important to have that. And it's also probably reflected in our staff turnover. In the last 2 years, we've probably only had 2 staff turnover, and it's not a bad reason why they've gone. One chased a boyfriend to Townsville, and another one just naturally went on to a job in America. So you'd be lost without your staff, and I do my best to reward them every way I can.
Well, you run the business with your wife, Michaye.
That's right.
What do you two do if you want to get away?
Okay, look, another big thing that my staff and my family do is we balance the customers, staff and lifestyle, and it's very important that as a business grows you do have time for that. Sometimes you lose focus of it and you have to be knocked back into gear. I'm fortunate now that my business is big enough that I've got operations managers at each section. I've got a full-time accountant, full-time marketing officer, so I've sort of grown to a point that it does run quite well if I'm not there, and I can afford to be, I can actually be anywhere in the business and it tends to run fine, and often I'm a skipper, a deckhand. I worked in the restaurant the last couple of days, and you know, so I basically just jump everywhere, and that also makes it a very smooth, it's important that it can run when you're not there.
Well, looking back on those days when you were just doing your fishing expeditions, did you think that you'd become such a successful businessman?
No. Look, I'm the eternal optimist. I never think something isn't possible to do, and often when I make a jump, I think, oh, why did I do that? But I then iron it out, and it always seems to work out so far. And I wouldn't have dreamt this would have happened, but I love it. It's really good.